For me, the moral influence theory is one of those angles looking in on the jewel of God's gift to us, God's atonement, Jesus' death, Jesus' resurrection. And it's a really, really important one for me, hugely important, but it's only one of the four, and I wouldn't want to hold it in isolation. So anyway, getting into it, moral influence theory, really that Jesus as God enters our world and chooses to live a moral life, even to the extent of the cross, as an example, as a leader for us to follow. And it's that sense where the New Testament talks a lot about being an imitator of Christ. Yeah, imitate me. And Jesus is that one who says, look, I'll love this world, I'll soak up evil, I won't return violence for violence, I will care for the poor, and I'll be willing to go even to my death on the worst of crosses for a punishment that I didn't cause, and for a crime that I didn't cause, but I'm willing to go there as an example of how we are to live. So becoming Christ followers means we are the people who choose to follow the example of Jesus, that moral influence that Jesus showed us through the cross. On its own, the moral influence approach to the atonement misses out on the strength and power of sin to corrupt us. And it's a blimmin' powerful thing. And so without some of the other views of the atonement where Jesus actually defeats sin and defeats some of the power of evil, and actually gives us the power through the Spirit to live differently, it's probably a little bit lightweight. I just see that as being a very, very powerful image, the moral influence theory, that Jesus would actually come, firstly enter the world as God, and then secondly be willing to die the most kind of shameful, painful, unfair death we can imagine. Very, very powerful in terms of the choices that I make. If Jesus is willing to make that choice, when I confront a choice for my own comfort, or my care of others, for my own sort of sense of self-preservation, or willingness to sacrifice or give myself away, I've got this example in Jesus in front of me. And he says, this is the way I lived, clearly, and I'm asked to take up my cross and follow, to actually be someone who imitates what Jesus does. God chooses to absorb the pain and suffering of the world. And God doesn't come down with a great big Gatling gun and just wipe things out and destroy stuff. Actually, God enters into and chooses to absorb, soak up, be part of that. God suffers. Incredibly powerful for me. Actually, my bottom line in faith about my God is I know my God suffers. And that's a hugely powerful thing. Salvation's, it's tricky. And I think one of the things that Christians can easily do is say it's about praying a prayer and it's all sussed. And I think the moral influence theory, the imitation theory of the atonement, it actually pushes us beyond that, just making a decision, and says, no, it's not just a decision, it's how we then choose to live our lives. It's a holistic package. The trick is, though, not to become that, let that become a kind of works salvation. If I work really, really hard and do all these things, God will love me more. It's not that, but it does set a pathway to say, this is the pathway I live out the reality of my salvation. Christians need to think far more about a God of vulnerability, humility and weakness, and willing to go to those difficult places of self-sacrifice rather than this all-victorious, all-powerful God. That's true, and it's part of the story, but hey, we're asked to imitate the humble God become man.